Hello, metallurgists. My name is Alan, and it's time to review the new Jag Panzer album for heavy metallurgy. The album is entitled The Hallowed. It came out on June 23rd on Atomic Fire Records, a label out of Germany that's got a pretty strong roster if you haven't checked them out. They've got a lot of classic legacy bands, but ones that are, still putting out a lot of good stuff. So if you're not familiar with the label, I'd say check out their roster. But we're not here to talk about the label. We're here to talk about Jag Panzer, one of the original US power metal icons, a band that came and went very quickly in the 1980s, but bounced back in the 1990s and have made a good go of it ever since. Nevertheless, they kind of have never gotten their full due from a lot of people. I feel like they're always still a little bit under people's radar. So perhaps this is the album that's going to help them break through, or perhaps not. I guess we'll see. So things to note here, besides it being their 11th studio album, this also sees the introduction of a new second guitarist, Ken Rodarte, relative unknown. He was in a demo band called Troll back in the 80s, but it doesn't appear he's done a whole lot since then. Nevertheless, spoiler alert, he turns in an amazing performance here that's very much in the fine tradition of outstanding Jag Panzer guitarists, alongside the likes of Chris Broderick, Joey Tafola, etc., etc., etc. Other than Ken, the rest of the Jag Panzer lineup has been pretty stable in recent years, so all your favorites are back in their correct positions on the stage. The Hallowed is a concept album, so there's a story that goes to this. It tells of basically humans and animals teaming up to sort of survive in a wintry post-apocalyptic landscape, and spoiler alert, eventually finding their way out of, this kind of, Armageddon glacial dominated region and moving on to greener pastures. And they all lived happily ever after. So it has a nice happy ending to it. This is not the band's first attempt at a concept album. They also tackled Macbeth on their Thane to the Throne album about 20 years ago. So they're not newcomers to the idea of doing a concept album. What you get here is undoubtedly classic Jag Panzer. Let's talk about a few of the tracks and see what some of the standouts are. The album starts off on a strong note with Bound as One. Right out of the gate, you've got, Harry, the Tyrant Conklin, hitting some killer high notes, really just doing those classic, screams and just piercing highs. It sounds like he hasn't aged a bit over time. His voice is in great shape. And, he's right out there, loud and proud in front, delivering exactly only the way he can. One of the truly, outstanding vocalists in U.S. power metal history, if not all of heavy metal history. The song is exactly what you are hoping it's going to be. It's one of those, again, kind of, forceful, anthemic, epic numbers that, if you're familiar with Jag Panzer, you know what to expect. And the band is delivering exactly that. Mid-paced gallops, a good heavy thud to them, but the songs are moving forward all the time. They always have this atmosphere of, warriors marching out, and we're either going to, overcome the odds or die valiantly trying. Very much the gist of Jag Panzer most of the time. You can trust in our might. We'll both weather this fight. Deadly forces our way. We will conquer this time. Second track, Pray, is a little different. Pray has actually got more of an aggressive chug riff to it. It's not thrash, but it's maybe leaning in that direction a little bit more. It's a little bit unusual for Jag Panzer to go in that direction. Can't say I'm nuts about the song, but it is at least something slightly different. So, yeah, points for that. Yeah, at this point, it's worth pointing out that a lot of these songs are going to have little story snippets, sound effects, a little bit of narration, spoken part here and there that are meant to, tie into the story itself. Now, the story is, in my opinion, nothing particularly special. This is not an Operation Mindcrime or Crimson Idol level concept album. It's an okay story. To be honest, you could listen to the album and not know anything about the tale, and the songs are still going to work just fine without it. I do, however, like these short little bits of narration and such, because first off, they're kept short. They're just little things either at the start or the end of a song. And they do help sort of mark where there are breaks. It's like, okay, this song is over. Here's a quick little sound effect tying into whatever's happening in the tale. Now here's the next song. This helps keep the songs from running together, one into the next, into the next. That's something that can happen on Jag Panzer albums, because a lot of their songs are very consistent and have that same kind of, mid-paced, gallopy, epic feel. Sometimes if you're not paying attention, you look up and it's track 6 and you thought you were on track 3. You missed some things. These little sound effects here and there throughout this album help you notice when a song is over and when you're moving to the next one. So they do serve, a pretty useful function, I think. Other songs worth pointing out, Ties That Bind is another one that just has, that big classic Jag Panzer anthemic feel to it. Absolutely undeniable. You say those loving words, you keep me on a leash. I keep us warm and safe. Track Stronger Than You Know is also extremely good. This is one of the faster paced numbers on the album, and it has just amazing, brilliant lead guitar work all over the thing. They really kind of, let the guys off the chain to have some fun with the guitar leads on this one. You have a lot of other songs, they'll mostly stick to that mid-paced, crunchy, epic gallop. But a couple of other highlights, to note. Edge of a Knife has this really great buildup right in the middle of the song where they just kind of slowly keep winding it up, working a little, tighter on the fretboard, and then finally just, release it and kind of go back to the main gallop. It's a really cool moment in the album. And then the other big track to note is the closer, Last Rites. This is a 9-minute number. So already you're thinking, yeah, they're going for, sort of the grand finale. And they deliver it quite well. Last Rites has a little bit more of a somber feel to it. You are getting to the conclusion of the story. But they still deliver that vibe quite efficiently, and it comes across really well in the music. There's, some tasteful use of violin included to give it, a little bit of, that kind of, folky vibe. Jag Panzer's done that sort of thing here and there before in the past, and they always use it to good effect. And then the album closes again with a little bit of narration, somebody kind of telling the tale from the future, kind of looking back. And it's like, I sort of, gather around children and hear the tale thing. Yeah, again, some of the narration clips remind me a little bit of stuff like what was used in The Road Warrior, the second of the Mad Max movies, where you have, the feral child is actually narrating through it, and as for the Road Warrior, that was the last any of us ever saw of him. He exists now, only in my memories. What do we have here at the end of the day? Well, you've got a very good Jag Panzer album. If we're going to look at this as a glass half full kind of scenario, this is a very solid album. It delivers everything you want out of a Jag Panzer record. Fans should be quite happy with it. There's not much to complain about here. There is, however, something that kind of sticks with me a little bit about this album, and it's one reason it's taken me a while to get around to reviewing it. This came out in late June, only getting this review video recorded in early August. Sorry for the delay. The problem's been that, playing it the first several times after I got it, it really just felt like another Jag Panzer album. And it's taken me a while to really play it through enough times to feel like I, had things to say about individual songs. Jag Panzer's at that point where they've done a lot of quality albums and they're very consistent. And typically in heavy metal, we think of that as a good combination. We want our bands to keep delivering the goods over and over again. But I think you also get to a point where you do reach saturation with bands that are consistent. And we think of bands like, Motorhead, extremely consistent, right? How many people do you know that actually want to own every Motorhead album? I mean, yes, the completists will get everything. The really die-hard, hardcore fanboys, and they'll get everything. Does the general average headbanger own every Motorhead album? No. I think after about the sixth or seventh album, probably sometime after Another Perfect Day, a lot of folks kind of lose interest in the rest of their discography. A couple of good albums here and there that they might latch onto, but not most of them. And I think the same is true for a lot of other bands like that. AC/DC, for example, extremely consistent. It's kind of a meme how consistent AC/DC is. How many people really ever listen to much that was recorded after Back in Black? Once again, the seventh album. Well, I said at the start of this video, this is Jag Panzer's 11th studio album. And even if you want to discount, the original Ample Destruction, that one set the bar very high. It's also really the only thing they got out back in the day. So let's discount that. Discount Dissident Alliance, the second album. You're not going to find a lot of fans of Dissident Alliance. There are reasons that album never comes up in conversation. And you can discount Chain of Command. This was one of those albums that was recorded back in the day, didn't get released until 2004, so it's kind of an odd piece in the discography. Just discard those three albums. Start in 1997, when they sort of officially came back with a new studio album. Well, even from that point forward, The Hallowed now represents their 8th studio album since that point in time. And, some are a little better than others. They each, have their nuances, but in general, they've been pretty consistent in their sound over 8 albums. And it makes me wonder, how many Jag Panzer albums does the average fan need? It's not a knock against the band. I'm glad they're still going strong. It's great to see them still put out a really high quality album like this. But how often is it going to get played? How many times are people going to play it? I don't know. These legacy bands like Jag Panzer, they now are first competing with all the other legacy bands that are still soldiering on after decades. They're also having to compete with all of the newer generation of bands who are literally young enough to be their children. And they're even competing with themselves for attention at this point. Because when I want to go play a Jag Panzer album, I like Jag Panzer. I own a lot of Jag Panzer albums. I own like 10 different copies of Ample Destruction. And none of these are Ample Destruction. These are all other ones. Why would I take the Hallowed off of the shelf as opposed to anything from this stack or the stack back there or the vinyl stack? I don't know. I am a little concerned that we've gotten to the point where Jag Panzer albums are going to be bought, played a couple of times. People will think, yeah, that's a great album. But then they're just going to put them on the shelf and collect dust. Or worse yet, people are going to feel like, do I really need another Jag Panzer album? That's great that it sounds like all the others, but I've got all these others. Or what do I do? Do I buy another one? I think really when you get around to, that 6th, 7th album, that's for a lot of fans, maybe that's going to be their saturation point, unless they're just, the absolute completist, or, they must own every Jag Panzer item out there. I'm not sure how it will play out for Jag Panzer. I'm not sure for myself. Like I said, this is a very strong album. The Hallowed should, definitely be noted as a great entry in their catalog, but it sits beside a lot of other great entries in their catalog. And there's nothing that I have found on this album that really screams, hey, this one is heads and shoulders above all of these other, a handful of records, that I've just shown. So where it'll be at the end of the day, I don't know. I'd say in closing, think about it this way. If you only have one or two Jag Panzer albums and you've really enjoyed them, then you should definitely pick up the Hallowed. This is going to hit you just right. Uh, it'll be a fine addition to your collection. I think you'll enjoy it quite a bit. If you're somebody who already has a ton of Jag Panzer albums and you're at that point where you feel like, well, do I need another Jag Panzer album? I'm not sure. This is a good album, but there's nothing that's going to set it apart from the ones that you already own. So you got to decide how to spend your money or not. It's a kind of a shame. The bands are a bit damned if they do and damned if they don't. If Jag Panzer goes out and does something completely off the wall, bonkers, crazy, and puts out an album that sounds 100% different, they make a thrash album or a death metal album or a new metal album or something, everyone's going to complain and say, oh, that's not at all what Jag Panzer's supposed to sound like. I don't want that album. But if they stick to their guns, do what they do really well, and put out another great, consistent album like The Hallowed, a lot of people start to feel like, well, how many Jag Panzer albums do I need on the shelf? Is that the one I should spend my money on? Maybe I should go check out this new band or this other thing that I buy a band that I've only got a couple of albums by and I'm not quite so saturated on. So yeah, it's a tough spot for these legacy bands to be in sometimes, I feel. But kudos to Jag Panzer for turning in another solid slab of US power metal. It is good to see these legacy bands come out and really nail it. Yeah, even if they tend to nail it every single time they come out. All right, let's wrap this up with a quick call to arms here. The album I want to shout out for this segment is Sacred Outcry's Towers of Gold. This one has been talked about a fair bit in recent times, even including here on Heavy Metallurgy and also on some other channels. This features Daniel from Lost Horizon on vocals, widely regarded as one of the best power metal vocalists of the 21st century. Sacred Outcry is a new project he's working with. It's also a concept album like The Hallowed. Sacred Outcry is epic power metal. Epic metal has all the hallmarks you'd expect, but they lean in the power metal side of things, not the heavier, doomier side of things whatsoever. It's kind of a long listen, but yeah, there's some really glorious moments on it. If that's your jam, then make sure you do not miss Sacred Outcry's Towers of Gold, and you can go hear Marty and Kellen, both featured here on Heavy Metallurgy at times. I believe they discussed this one over on Kellen's YouTube channel, Killing for a Company. They did a deep dive on the album, so you can get all the gritty details over there from them. All right, that is going to do it for this review of Jag Panzer's The Hallowed. Again, a really strong album, and good to see Jag Panzer still turning out quality material. With that, I'm going to call it a night. Everybody take care, and until next time, keep checking Heavy Metallurgy for more cool album reviews, album club discussions on Wednesday nights, and of course the Heavy Metallurgy live stream every Friday evening. And with that, I'm Alan. Everybody take care, and as always, keep banging your head.